Right now, though, let's start with CNN's Kyung La, who's been on this story for, I mean, God bless you, for months, and sat in on today's hearing on the so-called audit. So what did these folks say, Kyung?
Well, yeah, those many hours, whatever presentation, misinformation campaign, if you will. I actually spoke to Ken Mata, who's with the Secretary of State's office, the Information Security Officer, and he estimates 90% of some of the inflammatory information in there was inaccurate. 90%. Let's start with the first presenter to the two senators, Senate President Karen Fann and Warren Peterson. This guy is a conspiracy theorist. He's an anti-vaxxer. He's known in the far right as Dr. Shiva. He has no election experience, and yet taxpayers paid him to examine envelopes. And then the cyber ninja himself, Doug Logan, he also threw a lot of misinformation out there, except for this one part, Anderson. Take a listen.
If we take a look at the presidential race, Trump actually loses 261 votes from the official votes. Biden gains 99, and Jorgensen loses 204 votes. And again, these are all very small numbers when we're talking about 2.1 million ballots. These are very small discrepancies. So we can say that the ballots that were provided to us to count in the Coliseum very accurately correlate with the official canvass numbers that came through.
So the hand count? Trump lost again. But, that was just a really short part of his presentation, Anderson. The rest of it really was conspiracy spaghetti that he kept throwing on the wall, Anderson.
And, I hesitate to call them cyber ninjas because it just seems, it seems so absurd. But this company, or this man who conducted this bogus audit, are actually recommending legislation moving forward. What's that about?
Yeah, it is really hard to say, but we're going to say it because I'm probably never going to be able to say the name Cyber Ninjas ever again on television. But Cyber Ninjas is recommending legislation, not just one recommendation, but at the end of a lot of this misinformation that he presented in public, in the Arizona Senate, even though this is an official hearing, he didn't say it just once. He recommended 13 different points of legislation, all of which restrict voting access here in the state of Arizona for an election that, by and large, you talk to any election expert, they have been doing this well for a very long time. The same paper used in 2016, also used in 2020. The only thing that changed was the outcome in 2020, Anderson.
Kyung La, appreciate it. Thank you. I want to get perspective now from CNN Chief Legal Analyst Jeffrey Toobin and CNN Senior Political Analyst Kirsten Powers. So, Jeff, you look at not only Arizona, all these other states now taking their lead and conducting their own, so-called sham audits or audits. This does seem to be the new way forward, or one leg of the new way forward for Republicans. Just keep auditing, keep sowing doubt, keep sowing fear.
And Anderson, I try not to be an alarmist about this or anything else, but we have to really recognize how profoundly this is a departure from the American political tradition. One of the rules of the game has been when the votes are counted, that's the end. You can have a recount, which is an official process, but if that is the end, that is the end. And the idea that Republicans are basically asserting that any election, any close election that Democrats win is by definition illegitimate, and they will find a way to discredit it, that's something new in American politics. And it's a scary thing. And it looks like 2022 is only going to be worse because these forces are mobilizing in advance, limiting the right to vote, and then creating systems where they can discredit any vote that they lose. It's really a scary business. And the Supreme Court does, in its new conservative orientation, does not seem inclined to stop any of this before it happens.
And obviously, Kirsten, the former president, this is all he has going for him. This is what he is going to ride to his deathbed. And, the polling confirms the president's influence. 78% of Republicans believe that President Biden didn't win the election. How does this not just continue to undermine confidence in free and fair elections going forward?
it will continue, and that is exactly the point. This is the reason that Donald Trump started this whole idea that he didn't lose the election. Well, for a couple of reasons. One, also, it allows him to declare he's a winner among a group of people that are willing to accept that. So he's actually not somebody who lost the presidency. He's somebody who had the presidency stolen from him. And so that puts him in a better position. But we saw it all through his presidency that he tears down all the institutions because he wants Republican voters to only trust him, which is essentially where we are right now, where whatever he says, they accept, and anything to the contrary, they won't listen to. And then finally, as you alluded to before, this is to justify in their minds coming up with all of these onerous laws around elections to keep people from voting, specifically keeping people who vote for Democrats from voting. And so I think that they are doing this in an effort to say, look, we can't really trust our elections, so we have to create all these new laws to make our elections, functional, even though they are functional.
Well, and also the argument so many of them are making, Kirsten, is not even that, some of it is we can't trust, but it's just that so many people feel we can't trust, therefore we need to act because so many people feel this way that we have to do something about their feelings, and therefore, even though it's not factual, it's insane.
It's completely circular, but this has been something that's been building for a long time. Republicans for a long time were claiming that Democrats were, registering dead people to vote. Mickey Mouse was, registered to vote, and these kinds of things. We had all the controversy around Acorn many years ago, and so they have been planting the seed for a long time that Democrats are stealing elections or Democrats are doing something to disrupt elections, which now sort of looks like projection because they're the ones who are really interested in disrupting the electoral process.
But they're the ones who control the states where this is going on, who at least control the state legislatures in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, and the entire government in Texas. So it's not just rhetoric. They have the ability to make it harder for students to vote, people of color to vote, poor people to vote, people who vote Democratic, and that's what they're doing. But even beyond that, they are going into the vote counting process itself, and that's something new. That is something that is an escalation of this of these tactics, and in many of these states there is no check, and we'll see what the courts do about it. But the answer is probably not much.
Well, also, Kirsten, what's so cynical and frankly un-American about this, and the being done by so many Republicans, is that this actually was an incredibly, probably the most successful election in terms of turnout, people casting votes on all sides of the political aisle, Republicans and Democrats. It was actually a very good election for Republicans, other than the fact that their president did not get reelected. That's what's the cynicism of it, and it's kind of so shameless and brazen.
Yeah. Exactly. It is completely cynical, and it is an attack on democracy, and it's something that people shouldn't take lightly. People should see where this is headed. It's already highly problematic. It's already leading to them passing laws that are going to make it difficult for people to vote, and it's only going to get worse. Or the idea that it will become normalized for Republicans to never concede that they lost an election. That they literally have the last Republican president who will not concede that he lost the election, and the overwhelming majority of Republicans accepting that and believing that Joe Biden is an illegitimate president. That democracy can't work in those circumstances.
So, Jeff, how does this fever dream that the Republicans seem to be in, how does it break?
You know what? I don't know. And I don't know that it does break. These states are going to conduct a midterm election in a year, in a little more than a year, and we're going to see these changes in action, and we're going to see whether and how they change the vote counting process to skew it in their favor. There is no leadership in the Republican Party except for Donald Trump now. I mean, you know, at the moment, you know, it looked like after January 6th that Mitch McConnell, that Kevin McCarthy were going to start to speak out against him, but they've retreated, and Trump is the Republican Party now.